You know, one of the reasons we felt that General Bajwa, who was then the army chief, one of the reasons was a pretext used was that I was getting too close to Russia, and that you know, we had struck a deal to get cheaper oil and cheaper wheat on my Russian trip. But I think that was just a pretext, because the conspiracy was basically that General Bajwa wanted to have an extension, and he had already worked out with who's the current prime minister, that they had worked out that if my government was removed and his government came in, this current government, then General Bajwa would get an extension. This was behind the real reason behind the conspiracy to remove me. This is not true. I had a long meeting, you know, with President Putin. It was about bilateral issues. One of the things I talked about was that because of the tension, then it wasn't, well, I think that morning, and unfortunately, the Russians moved into Ukraine. But until then, the tension had raised the prices of oil internationally, and that affected countries like us, the developing world. It affected enormously because the petroleum imports are such a large part of our imports that it upsets our balance of payments. So therefore, it causes huge inflation in our countries, which pushes people below the poverty line. So when I spoke to President Putin, he then sent his energy minister to talk to our energy minister to strike out a deal to have discounted oil. But the moment we got back, a few days later, there was a vote of no confidence, and really the whole thing went out of the window. We were, in a couple of weeks, our government was removed. No, well, I didn't say, India got apparently 40% discount, but I mean, we just spoke about a discount. That was, things were going to move forward from then onwards. But the moment we came back, the no confidence portion came, and then everything went on hold, because then it was a question of the government surviving. Well, look, you know, there's a history to that. Pakistan participated in the US war on terror, which is after 9/11. And in that war, 80,000 Pakistanis died. And not just that, I mean, over $100 billion lost to the economy, because Pakistan became the epicenter of terror. We had bombs going all over the place. We had suicide attacks. But the state was trying to save itself. So my point was that Pakistan should not get involved in conflicts of other countries. My point is that the top priority of a Pakistani leader, prime minister, should be to protect its vulnerable people. And we have 100 million people who are vulnerable, 50 below the poverty line, 50 just above it. So if you are involved in a conflict, how can you protect the interest of your own people? And always the conflict causes poverty. And in our case, in the war on terror for 15 years, which Pakistan participated, I mean, no investor would come to Pakistan. No, well, actually, there's very little terrorism in Pakistan. We had a bit of terrorism when the Pakistani Taliban who were in Afghanistan, after the fall of Kabul, they then were the Afghan government made them relocate back to Pakistan. So there is a bit of terrorism. I mean, I can't say there is zero terrorism, but that's because our government has taken the eye off the ball. I mean, if we were in government, we would have rehabilitated them. We would have spent time and money to make on terrorism, created terrorists. I mean, in Pakistan, I mean, look, I have made statements and interviews over the 15 years when we were participated in this war on terror. I kept saying that the more actions you take against the militants, more collateral damage, because, you know, there was no army they were fighting. These were civilians. So, for instance, there were 450 drone attacks in Pakistan. Now, these drone attacks, it's the only time a country is being bombed by its own ally. But the drone attacks, remember, they were in villages, and in our what I call the tribal areas adjacent to Afghanistan. And so when a bomb explodes in a village, there's a lot of collateral damage. and collateral damage created militants. I have no doubt that even in Afghanistan, the Afghan Taliban gained from collateral damage caused by night raids and drone attacks in Afghanistan. Same happened in Pakistan's tribal area. The more the drone attacks, the more collateral damage, the more militants. So, but in difference was in Pakistan, they avenged themselves against Pakistan's security forces. So both sides, Pakistanis were dying. Well, look, since we last spoke, I had had one assassination attempt. And then since we last spoke after that, on the 18th of March, I had another assassination attempt. And then there was another one a few days later, which I preempted because I was informed beforehand that there was going to be a false flag operation where there were people from, they had people inducted within my own party members, and they would have shot some policemen, and then the police would have come to kill me. And why is my life in danger? Because according to all opinion polls, we will sweep the elections. So this is the election year. If that was the case, then they shouldn't be worried about elections. Already the government, her government, the Supreme Court had ordered elections according to the Constitution on the 15th of May of Punjab, the biggest province, 60% of Pakistan. The government refused. Out of 37 by-elections, PTI, my party, has swept 30 of them. So if the party fits in a small place, why are they so scared of elections? No, that's not true. I wasn't on remand. The Supreme Court ruled that my arrest was unlawful. That's why I got out. It is the biggest nonsense. You know, first of all, economy. All you have to do is look at the economic survey of Pakistan published by this government. Our economy was booming a year ago. It was growing at 6%, and it is in the economic survey of Pakistan. And our industry was growing. 17 years, the government had the best economic performance. Plus, the handling of COVID, we were the top 3 countries which handled COVID-19 the best. So that's nonsense. And secondly, how can anyone compare what happened in my 3.5 years to virtually a martial law in Pakistan right now? This complete media, my name is not allowed to be uttered on media. Forget about appearance. The judiciary passes a verdict, the government doesn't listen to it. We now are becoming a banana republic. You can't even compare what happened between what was happening in my time and this government. Look, you know, international relationship, my opinion is very straightforward. Pakistan became part of the Western Bloc during the Cold War. And so, you know, we were cut off from Russia and all the Soviet Union bloc. India, on the other hand, had a non-aligned foreign policy, so they weren't part of a bloc. Right now, again, India is a part of the Quad, which is the special relationship with the US in that alliance, and yet it trades with Russia. It is trading with China. I mean, that's how countries should have the foreign policy, should be for the benefit of their own people. Well, no, it is India's non-aligned policy has been since inception, since 75 years. And so Modi is basically following that policy. But my point is that the foreign policy should be for the benefit of their own people. When you become part of blocs, or when you become part of a conflict, like Pakistan became part of the Afghan Jihad, we paid a heavy price. We had 5 million refugees here. We had Kalashnikovs. We had drugs flowing in here. And sectarian militancy in Pakistan as a result of that first joining the Afghan Jihad. Then we've joined the war on terror. 80,000 Pakistanis were killed. So my point is, Pakistan, top priority is to get people out of poverty. It's China rivalry right now. And that is a problem because, you know, you have to navigate between them. But I mean, China is Pakistan's neighbor. It is the fastest growing economy. So we have to have good relationship with China. We always have had for 70. Well, we didn't have that option, I'm afraid, then. We were already in an IMF program when I became the prime minister. And, we really had no choice but to go to the IMF. Well, look, I don't care what this, if they don't comment about what's happening to me. And frankly, I think Pakistan's internal matters, eventually we will have to solve our problems. But my only point is, how come the Western countries talk about what is happening in Taiwan, what's happening in Hong Kong, about the Uyghurs in China, and about Russian human rights issues? So is it only our human rights and democracy important when it comes to rivals? Should it not be consistently across the board that if your professed aims are democracy and human rights, then should it be wherever they are violated, then they should speak out? Because Pakistan right now, the worst human rights violations are going on in Pakistan right now. Because, he's a lone killer. I mean, his own party says that he's killed 18 people. He's murdered 18 people. And so, he's a small-time crook. So it means is that if there are elections and I win, then someone like a crook like him will be in trouble. I think that's what he means. Because, problem in Pakistan right now is that we do not have rule of law. In other words, there are people, powerful crooks are above law. And the majority of the population has no access to justice. They don't have, no one protects their fundamental rights. Hence, I started my movement for justice 27 years ago. Let me just say clearly, the journalists that went missing had nothing to do with my government, had everything to do with the military establishment, because we were coming out of the war on terror, and during war on terror, the military was very sensitive to journalists criticizing them. So we had, they would pick up people. But believe me, my government never went after any journalist. And right now, you can't compare what happened then. One of our best investigative journalists, Arshad Sharif, was hounded out of the country and murdered in Kenya. I mean, 3 of our top journalists have left the country. They're out of the country because they feared for their life. And the whole media, there's a total clampdown. So you cannot compare what happened during our time and this total fascism which is going on right now. It's not according to me, it's in all the opinion polls in Pakistan. Plus, if you want evidence, a party wins 80% of the by-elections. So it's obviously, it is right now probably the most popular party in our history. Now, coming to this comparison, it's a bit different. The sort of cases I'm facing, if those cases were, if they tried to put those cases on Donald Trump, people would laugh in the US. How could I have committed 9 criminal offenses when I was in jail for 4 days? How could I have committed 40 terrorist attempts? I am on 40 charges of terrorism. How can it be possible? So imagine if they tried to put a terrorism case on Donald Trump, people would, make mincemeat of the government if they ever did that. So you can't compare what is happening there to Donald Trump and what is happening here. I've been charged for murder. I don't even know the guy. There's some lawyer who gets killed in a remote town, and I'm charged for murder. When his wife says that it is a family feud, his son has nominated some other people, yet the government has charged me for his murder. So what is happening here is ridiculous. I was asked a question, about politics as a career. I said I would not even wish it on my enemies. If my sons ever said they wanted to enter politics as a career, it is the worst career to have, and especially for people who can do other things. I guess people who can't do anything would go into politics. But politics has a mission, like our founding father, Jinnah, or like Nelson Mandela, or like Gandhi in India. I mean, when it is a mission, it is completely different. For me, someone who had everything, who was the biggest name in the country, I didn't need to be in politics. But I realized that unless we have rule of law, which we didn't because we have an elite capture in this country, a small elite is above law and it's captured the resources. So unless you have rule of law, a level playing field, I always felt our country had no chance. He is talking absolute rubbish. It was the first time that we started probe against the big mafias, like the sugar mafia, like the petroleum mafia. It's never happened in our country before. The problem was that the army chief, if he vetoed anything, you could do anything. And he did not allow me to get the other mafias under the rule of law because he was connected with them. I mean, he was friendly with the political mafias. So he had a veto on this because he was all powerful. So what to correct you, to bring the powerful under the rule of law, you need a strong government. My government was a coalition government, weak, which did not have the majority. So whenever I would touch a mafia, I would have problem keeping my majority. And so therefore, my conclusion is that you can only, if you want reforms and you want to bring people under the rule of law, you cannot do it unless you come up with a proper majority, you know. Well, of course, this is the election year. I mean, my party is all poised for the election. But what is happening is that the other team is so scared of losing that they want either a technical knockout, so me going in knock me out through a military court, because the civil courts cannot knock me out because the cases are all bogus. So now they want military courts to actually disqualify me or put me in prison, which again will be a big farce. But of course, my party is poised to win the elections whenever they are, because it's just that the public opinion. Never has the public stood with any one party as it stands today, which is all the 12 parties together are scared of competing against us.